Jason.
Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Hurry up and watch me fall.
Okay, here we go. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Look, Mum, I'm Failing, powered by Song Division, the podcast where we bring together two seemingly dissimilar guests, one a full-time creative artist, one a entrepreneur, business leader or owner. There's a little bit of crossover on this episode, which I'm really excited about. I'm your host, general manager of Song Division, voice of an angel, mind of a devil, songwriting facilitator, songwriting machine, MC, and now podcast host to the stars. I have to say all that, guys. It's in the script, so bring it up with my script writer. Really excited to be here. Got some amazing guests for you today. Start with Jason. Jason Allan Scott is a prolific serial entrepreneur, podcaster, and author, amongst many other things. He wears many hats, and I mean that literally too. He's a bit of a hat guy. He started, managed, and sold businesses worth millions. On the podcast world, he's helped his clients secure over $50 million in funding and tens of millions in contracts through storytelling and pitch consulting. I cannot wait to talk about some of his podcasts, especially his latest one. He's had his own health setbacks, which we'll hopefully go into a little bit, but from all of my experiences with him, Jason just shines nothing but positive energy and light, which is why I wanted to get him on here. Pep Rosenfeld is an American comedian, writer, and entrepreneur. He's a former Emmy Award-nominated writer for Saturday Night Live. He's become a central figure in the European comedy and business world, best known as co-founder of Boom Chicago, the Amsterdam-based comedy institution where I have personally been and had an amazing night. It's launched the careers of stars like Seth Meyers, Jordan Peele, Amber Ruffin, and he's also a well-sought-after speaker in the business world, speaker, mentor, facilitator, using comedy as a tool in the corporate world. Like I said, Jason, Pep, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
That's a tough one to come back from. That was a lot of words, Sam. And by the way, I'm pretty sure you wrote the script. I
did my best.
Yeah.
Welcome both. This one's going to move around a lot because, like I said, you're both really great storytellers. But I generally like to go back to the start. Jason, I want to start with you. It's a bit of a more difficult question for you because I want the first question is normally how did it all begin? What made you realize I want to do X with my life? But with you, you've done so much with your life. What's the common thread? Had you always have an interest in learning? Have you always had an interest in sharing knowledge with others? What was the bit where you went, I love doing that and I want to do that for the rest of my life?
I think it was Steve Jobs that coined this idea that there are two types of entrepreneur. There is a missionary and there is a mercenary. I am a mercenary. I have done things for the good of mankind, but not on purpose. Desperation was my motivation. I grew up in the slums of Cape Town, South Africa during the apartheid, where according to statistics, there are 40,000 poor whites, of which my family of 8 in a 2-bedroom council house was one of them. And I started my first business at 5. I started a circus because no one in my hood could afford to go to the circus. And we saw all the signs, Boswell Wilkie Circus coming to South Africa. And I remember being like, why can't we go? And I've recently learned, I was diagnosed last year as being functionally autistic. And one of the things autistic people have is the inability to understand roadblocks. And I couldn't understand why we couldn't go to the circus. And my grandparents who raised me said, well, it's just not a thing. Like, it's just, our people don't get to go to circuses. That's for the wealthy people. And I thought, well, I'm going to go. I'd seen nuns come to our house, knock on the door and say, can you give me some money? And which I always thought was really ridiculous because we're poor. Why are you in a poor area asking for money? But nonetheless. And they used to say, well, just give us what your conscience will allow. And I thought that was a great sales pitch, even before I knew what a sales pitch was. So I'd knock on the door and I'd say, we have a circus coming to town, pay what you can. And people would just give a couple of coins, but sometimes they'd give bread. And I went home and ate the bread, spent the money on sweets. And my grandmother walked in. I was 5-year-old, covered in stuff with all the money I'd spent. I'd spent it immediately. I learned a very quick business lesson. If you spend really quick, it's hard for the tax man to take anything from you. And she said, well, you've learned the first lesson in business. How she knew this, I still don't know. The second is you need to execute on the money you've taken. And I put on a circus. And that was my very first business. After that, I couldn't understand how we were white in a black country. I couldn't understand how we got there. And if we could get to Africa, why couldn't we go back to wherever we came from? And I sort of said, okay, well, I don't want to end up like this. I don't want to be starving all the time. I don't want to just hear the constant fighting. I'm going to get out. So my very first business was OPM, other people's money, printed promotional clothes, probably the easiest business for anyone to start. You know, you get the person to pay you up front, $10, you get the t-shirt for $2.50, you get the print for $1.50, you got $5, you got $5 profit. And that's all I did. And I literally did sort of desperation up to desperate. And every time I would do really well, like I started a swimming school in Bangkok, which I built up. I got 2.3 million when I was 28 years old. You know, I did something stupid. No one told me you only should have to get rich once, right? Everything else is a mistake. And I did not learn that. And I then built that and I sold that. And then I went traveling and then I got married really quickly with my sort of sweetheart. And then that fell apart and then lost everything and started again. And then would move countries thinking, okay, if I can, there's this thing called the familial paradox, which is this idea that the people closest to you, you can't recognize for their excellence. And I couldn't seem to sell to my friends. And I'd be like asking them for jobs and no one would give me. And I thought, well, if I just move, and if I move, there's probably a better opportunity. And there's, you know, currency arbitrage between the rand, one of the weakest currencies in the world, and the dollar, or the rand and the pound. And I learned business lessons incredibly fast because of that desperation. And sadly for me, definitely my own fault. I recognize that now. You know, 3 divorces later, 11 businesses started, involved in 9 exits. I'm very good at business, and I used to be very bad at relationships. Partly, I think, because I'm autistic and I'm quite straightforward, and I try and solve problems, and sometimes it sounds like I'm starting problems. And I think partly because I always put work first until very recently. Like when I sold my last business 2 years ago, I finally sort of said, okay, enough. I don't need all the decisions that got me here are not the decisions that will keep me here. They're the decisions that will cause me to be destroyed, right? Like a rocket ship has a certain amount of oil or petrol just to get to a certain altitude, and then it gets rid of it, and then it can move to the next phase. I never got rid of it, and it just weighed me back down to earth is probably the best analogy I can use for my storyline. And I obviously know you from events. I got into events, I was top 100 in the world 3 times. I built a very successful venue. From that, I saw Donald Trump on TV, and he had a beauty pageant. So I started a beauty pageant, which I then sold while I was still working within the event spaces. And then I, tried to fix problems within our space and managed to build one and sell one.
So it's I would imagine from that answer, it's the problem solving bit that you really get a kick out of too.
It's surviving. Like I can honestly say, when I first started doing talks, I used to say, I'm not an entrepreneur. Like everyone else you've had on stage is an entrepreneur, right? I'm a hustler. I work out the problem. I work out, is it a vitamin pill or a pain pill? I want to solve painful problems. If you go into a vitamin shop and you walk out and you buy nothing, you feel nothing. There's no dissonance. There's no, oh no, why didn't I get some vitamin D? Oh. But if you've got a broken leg and you go into a hospital, there's no money you won't pay to stop the pain. Yeah. I want to be in that business over and over and over. So I'm always looking for that. And normally I'm trying to solve something. In 2012, I started a medtech business to help my dad. I was sending money all the time. I think then I was working for Novus Leisure. I had Ruby Blue on Leicester Square. I had Sway in Holborn. And I was just sending money home, and he didn't get up. I'd find out that he'd been in bed for a week. And I was like, I need to do something more. So I built a med tech business for him. That was all about him. Then the next business I started was for my uncle. My next business was for, was just for cash. So I could send them some home to sort people out. And it's always kind of been there. This is the first time, which is the last 2 years, where I've kind of been able to go, okay, I can choose. I can choose where I go next, what problem I solve, who I solve it for. Do I know where to find these people? I say that, and I recently exited because I built AG1 for dogs, and I got managed bought out because people there didn't want to work as hard. And they were like, we'll just pay you to go.
Just get out of here.
Just get out. You're working too hard.
Yeah, and if we do have time, we will touch on your, you started a business with your dad, and that maybe didn't end as hoped. So but let's just park that. Pep, same question. Was it always I love entertaining, I love making people laugh, I love humor and comedy, and when did it go from a passion to a profession for you?
I mean, honestly, I always say the same thing, Jason. First of all, listening to you, Jason, just makes me think several things. One is every choice I've made has been wrong, or every choice I've made has been brilliant. I'm not sure which, but you've got me questioning everything.
I knew you two would get along.
Yeah, and also well, anyway. So I've always liked making fun of stuff, right? Like I've got a best friend, and he and I have always just made fun of whatever. And like as kids, we would do like little skits in class and stuff like that if we were allowed to, and somewhere between class clown and nerds looking for attention. people always ask me, why are some people funny and others aren't? And I'm like, well, because some people needed to be funny because we weren't cool or, athletic or whatever. So, being funny is just how some mix of tried to get dates and tried to keep our parents from divorcing. Neither were successful for me, but the process was important. And it was after university where I graduated with a degree in economics and psychology. And but we were taking improv classes in Chicago, because in Chicago everybody's taking improv classes, and we were on the list. And we had kind of risen to what I would call the middle of the Chicago comedy scene. And I think there was room for growth. But we did a trip. We did like a postgraduate trip to Europe, and we were in Amsterdam buying hash for the rest of the trip. We got super high and came up with what I think is the best stoner idea ever, which is, hey, we should come back here next summer and do a comedy show, because they don't have anything like what we're doing in Chicago. In Chicago, they've got plenty of what we're doing. So why don't we come here? We'll have a summer project. And we conned 4 other people into coming out and doing it with us. And it worked. Like, the Dutch folks liked it. Tourists liked it. We were on the street selling the show. We made before the internet, we made this guide to the city with a map on the back. And, and what do you know? It was a guide to the city that had a pretty good review of our show. And we'd hand it to people off the trains and stuff like that. And we were out there hustling the show as best we could, if I can borrow the phrase, Jason. And it just worked. Every year it got a little bit bigger, a little bit better. The summer got longer and longer. Ironic if you've ever spent the summer in Amsterdam. And here we are.
Yeah, and we'll do some shameless plugs at the end, but if you ever get a chance, you have to go to Boom Chicago in Amsterdam. I went a couple of months ago. Oh gosh, end of last summer. And truth be told, Pep, you kindly put us on the door, and me and my friend went about an hour early and went to the bar across the road, and we were like, it was a ghost town. And I was a bit like, oh God, this could get a bit awkward. Is this going to be like us two and a comedian? Anyway, I don't know what happened. I turned away, or we moved seats. By the time we went to leave, the queue out the door to get in the show was massive, and there wasn't a spare seat. And it was just an excellent night. And to do that in a country that doesn't, English isn't a first language, I imagine. Maybe you didn't think it was a huge risk because you were high at the time, but it must have at some point felt like a bit of a risk.
Well, it's funny. We sent a letter. We faxed the Dutch tourist board, right? Like there was this group called the VVV, and we sent them an email. No, it wasn't an email. It was a fax. There wasn't an email. We sent them a fax. It was 1993, and we basically said, "Look, here's our plan, and we want to do this, and it's this kind of show, and this is our target audience, and blah blah blah. What do you think?" And they basically wrote back, "Dutch people will not come see a show in English. Tourists will not see a show at all. No show can survive without subsidies. You will not get subsidies. Think twice about your plans." And we read her fax, which, by the way, came back very quickly. I don't know that I would have responded to anybody that quickly. We read the fax and thought, based on what she wrote, I think we should definitely do this plan. And so we did it. By the way, we never did get that subsidy. She was right about that. But since then, she's come to the show. We showed her, because we got the fax framed on our wall, and we showed it to her and took a picture with her next to it, and she had to go, "Well, I was wrong. I like the show too."
Yeah, some of the memorabilia and photos of people who've performed there is very, very cool. And just quickly, you struck a chord there, which I've never really thought about, Pep. 2 things. I'm a performer. I'm definitely not a comedian, but I have like a concave chest. I have a very sunken chest, and I'm a very skinny guy. And I definitely at school probably was very self-conscious of that. And maybe that had to do with why I was always trying to make jokes and make people laugh. And also my parents went through a very ugly divorce between the ages of about 6 and 10 for me. So that's all clicking for me, which is pretty interesting. James,
I have a theory on this.
Come on, jump in.
My theory is this: the bigger the wound, the bigger the success. Like I read a book a day. Sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 days. Obviously, I have a podcast breaking up books. But every single story of someone successful, inverted commas, because success can mean different things to different people. There is this massive wound. There is this whether it's in concave chest, whether it's you're just not cool, you can't find the right group, you can't get the girl. There's some reason, some massive piece. When it comes to men, it's predominantly normally sort of anger, or I'll show them, or I'll get a bunch of other guys that are exactly like me and will show them. There's this kind of thing. So it's I had gynecomastia when I was a kid.
What is that, Jess?
Guide Customer is it's got a horrible joke name, which I'm not going to mention on air. It's ladies' breasts on a young boy. So you get female genitals because of a gene disconnect where the body creates a mammary gland versus a pectoral gland. So I had that until I was 12. And then I got lucky because I got assassinated. I got shot through the chest. And they had to cut into my chest to get the bullet. And that allowed me then to get surgery.
Wait,
I got a
what?
big bullet hole through my
on.
chest. I don't know if you can see. Small hole through the back, big hole through the back. Small hole at the front.
What do you mean you were assassinated, though? Was someone out for you?
Yes. So when I
Let's get the kid with the tits?
Yeah, exactly. You never showed it to me. Pretend to die. When I was a kid, I grew up very poor. The only way you survive poverty as a minority is you join a gang. You join a fellowship, which is how they sold it, right? Of other people in the same predicament as you that can work together as a group that can protect each other. And especially because we used to get bullied, we'd get mugged on the way to primary school. If you got a new pair of shoes, they'd rob you in the bushes. I walked across 2 fields to get to my school from my house. And I joined this, it's called the Sexy Boys. And I mean, I was a child, I was 5 years old, 6 years old. But I joined the Sexy Boys and they cut your hand when you join, blood in, blood out. And you blood brothers with all the other boys. And I didn't understand this concept, obviously being that young, that blood in, blood out meant when you leave, you also have to give blood. So they kill you. You can never leave the gang. You are a sexy boy from the moment you join to the moment you die. I didn't know that. So when my dad became a bootlegger, we brought Irish whiskey from America, Jameson's Irish whiskey, triple distilled, over to South Africa because you couldn't get it. My father got a bit of money and we could move out of the ghetto to quite a nice, like a middle-class area called...
Can I just interrupt quickly to note that you added triple distilled where it was 100% unnecessary, but you can't help but pitch while you're talking?
Absolutely, yes. I can tell you everything about Irish whiskey and Scottish whiskey.
I believe it. Yeah.
I used to go sales calls with him. We did this terrible sales pitch. We'd go to a restaurant, ask for an Irish coffee. They'd bring it. My dad would sip it. He'd spit it out. He'd say, "This is Scottish whiskey." They'd come back and show Glenfiddich. He'd go, "No, this is not triple distilled. This is double distilled." And then he'd say, "By the way, I happen to have a box of this Irish whiskey. You should try that with coffee." And that was our sales pitch. They used to get very drunk and I'd have to drive us home. So yes, triple distilled. I go back and I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm really sorry. I have to leave." And they're like, "What do you mean you're leaving?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to move to this new area and I'm obviously not going to be a sexy boy anymore." And they're like, "Can you just wait right here?" And they went and fetched a gun, came back and shot me, thinking I was going to die. And ended up, it was very strange because I'd brought I brought a kid who was black from my new area to my old area. And when the police came to arrest my murderer, they arrested my friend because he was black. And the guy that shot me was white. So I had to no, like while I'm bleeding out and I'm 12 years old, arrested the wrong guy. It's the white guy. It's the other white guy. There's only 2 white guys here.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I got shot. It's actually interesting because the day that I got shot, I was 12. I was on a deathbed. They told me I was going to die. We couldn't afford medical aid. So there was no way I was going to survive. And next to me was a guy that threw himself in front of a train. On the other side was a guy that was in a gang fight. And I remember the gentleman who in the train said, "We got the benefit of 7 seconds." And I said, "What's 7 seconds?" And he said, "Well, at the end, apparently, you get 7 seconds of like a highlight reel of your life before you die." And I remember thinking, I'm 12 years old. I don't have a highlight reel. I haven't done anything. I haven't fallen in love. Like all the stuff I'd seen in movies and read in books, none of that had come true. I spent most of my childhood either in a library or breaking into caravans. Like there was I couldn't see what this highlight reel was going to be. And I sort of made a promise that if I survived this, the rest of my life would be a highlight reel. So that 7 seconds would feel like a whole nother life before I passed away. And that has been, will it make money? Will it make a great story? Has been kind of my thing every single time I try anything or do anything.
Wow.
But if I could be Sam for a second, we got here because you were telling us your theory, which was that the deeper the wound, the
bigger the success.
So I was just going to say that, I mean, think about the folks at Walt Disney that have discovered that, where like step one to be a hero, both your parents have to be killed when you're a kid. Like that's the step one.
Because he killed his father. Because Walt Disney killed his dad.
What?
Do you not know this?
Hey, segue. Hold up. Your podcast. We're going to be talking about that, Jason, because there's Pep. You got to get on this podcast. Maybe we should just jump around. Let's go to it because it's a good segue. Jason, talk about the Walt Disney story, then talk about the podcast because it's freaking awesome.
So when I was a kid, obviously same as you, there's no internet, right? There was no, if you had those knock doors, encyclopedia salesmen, they used to come to your door and be like, would you like to buy? I have A to Z, and you get a section. We couldn't afford that. And my grandmother explained that there was a place called a library where you could get a library card and you could read as many books as you want. And we didn't have TV either. As I said, we're very poor. So I would spend hours and hours, pretty much every day after school, go straight to the library and just read book after book after book after book. This did not make me very popular, even less popular, if possible, than I already was as a kid who didn't have parents that were together and weren't married, and no one understood how could you not have a mother because mommy and a daddy make a child, and it was very confusing for everyone I grew up with. But what I learned was that every story I'd ever been told was predominantly wrong. That it was part of a story. It was the simplification of a story to make the end result sound more impressive. That someone like Walt Disney was so obsessed with control that he bought this beautiful brand new house for his parents. And instead of, when they had a problem with their furnace, instead of sending someone who was a furnace expert to go fix it, he sent someone from his office because he could control when they went, how long they were there for, and he could control how much he paid them. And because they knew nothing about furnaces, the furnaces caught a light, created a massive amount of smoke, and ended up killing his dad and almost killing his mother at the same time. And she very, very closely escaped. And hence every story has this big parental death, whether it's, Scar killing Mustafa in The Lion King, or whether it's Bambi's getting her mom shot. There is this massive scar that immediately appears, which creates the hero's journey. And I'm sure as a writer, you know that forwards and backwards, but we see this over and over. We see this with Elon Musk and his dad. We see this with Howard Hughes and his dad, Howard Hughes Sr. We see it over and over, and even Estee Lauder. Like it's such a line, a red string, which is the whole thing I have in my podcast, how these all connect. And it is this wound. The bigger the wound, the more success the individual.
Yeah. Yeah, and just quickly, go on with that with the podcast. I want to talk about what it's all about, but then also what you managed to achieve in terms of getting it in charts and stuff like that. Very quickly, Jason.
So in 2015, I launched my first podcast. I was coming out of events. I'd found out that I had multiple sclerosis, and stress is the worst thing for MS. And events is the fifth most stressful job in the world. And I had a club. So I had an event space, and I had a members area and a restaurant. So I knew I couldn't keep doing it. So I was like, I got to think of something. And I thought, I'd studied radio broadcasting. I loved radio. I'd worked in radio once. I'm going to start a podcast. Podcasts seem to be a thing. There are a lot of white guys with baseball caps on podcasts in 2015. I was like, I could be that guy. So I started a podcast.
2026 too.
Exactly. Yeah. Funny enough, not much has changed. In fact, that brings us full circle, but I'll come to that in a second. Stay with us tuned. You'll find out the answer. So in 2015, I launched the show called The Guest List Podcast. And I call it The Guest List because I have a nightclub and people are always asking, can I get on your get list? And I speak to a bunch of experts, and I'm kind of learning about starting a tech startup. What does that look like? How does that work? Tech is the fourth leverage point of humanity, labor, cash, media, code. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to do this thing. Anyway, massive fiasco. I end up losing a bunch of money. The whole thing doesn't work. But when I close it down, episode 13, season 1, still available on Spotify on the Guest List Podcast. You hear me in the back of an Uber speaking to my third wife. And she just is like, this is terrible. Like, you're throwing all this money at this podcast. It's not at this company. It's not working. And I close it on a Thursday. On a Tuesday, I went back to work. I spent the weekend just with her. And there are all these letters. Never had so many LinkedIn messages in my life, 60 something messages saying, love the podcast. So funny. It's like The Office, but it's a podcast. I'm thinking, none of it's The Office. I'm not writing comedy. This is my life. Like, I'm absolutely clueless on this tech stuff. And it sounds funny, but it's not supposed to be. And I did a season 2, and then I monetized it, and that became a fantastic little money spinner. And then by season 3, I won top 100 businesses in the UK for profit. 2016, I went to number 10 Downing Street to talk about how I did this with a microphone and Wi-Fi in the lab. And then someone there said, oh, you got lucky because you're a white guy with a baseball cap who has a podcast. And I was like, okay, bugger that. I'm going to do it again. So I did another podcast called Smarter Event Planning, which was all about EAs and PAs. I sold that to a tech firm called Assembler. And he disappeared, so I had to shut that down. And then I was like, I wonder if I could do it 3 times. I think I have a blueprint. I think I know how to do this. I think I know how to make money out of this. I think I know how to get in the charts. Apple had made me new and noteworthy. So I started another show called Not Another Crypto Show. Again, a bunch of white guys with baseball caps talking about something with a very small niche, right? What do you Americans say? Riches to niches, or niches to riches. So I was like, I'm going to do this thing. I built that up. We got a major sponsor. We got bought, sold my third show. So recently, 2026, someone says, yeah, you can't do that now. There's 7.5 million podcasts now. Back then, there were like 5,000. You pretty much all knew each other. And I said, I bet in 30 days I can get a podcast up, get it in the charts, top 30, top 40, top 50, just it'll be in the charts. And I'll monetize it to, I don't know, 5 or 6 figures. And they were like, there's literally no chance. So I just went on Twitter and I was like, day 1, come up with a name. It's either creative or it's personal brand or it's linked to a brand. Day 2, and I just linked it out. And then I launched it. And I launched it as a monologue podcast because I didn't want to have to rely on guests. Another thing people kept saying was it's the guests that bring the audience, which it is. There's definitely a part of that. But if you can create a strong narrative with a strong beginning, middle, and an end that connects to a listener or a viewer, that has entertainment in its forefront and then education as a byfall, where people can walk out and go, I learned this. And you say, where did you learn that? And you go, from the Jason Allan Scott show, shameless plug. That'll bring me even more audience. And within 14 days, we were top 43 in the US, in the world, sorry, top 34 in the US, number 2 in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow.
And you are so generous with your knowledge sharing, like what you were doing on Twitter, sharing the process, and then obviously what you're doing in the episodes. I've already promoted it on my LinkedIn. And funny to talk about a little bit about failure, but the plan was to do this show with a guest every one week, and then 2 guests every 1 week, and then a solo episode where I do 5 things on failure. That failed miserably. The solo ones, I just didn't feel I had the value to add or the storytelling. So I've actually cut that for now, and I'm just doing the guest. So definitely in this situation, the guest is bringing the audience, I think. But let's jump around again, Pep. We have to talk SNL. I'm obsessed with comedy at the moment. I'm listening to Smartless episode with Colin Jost, who's the
Scarlett Johansson's husband.
Yeah, and what's he?
SNL host.
The head writer for Saturday Live.
Head writer. No, I'm thinking of the what he's famous for, the show that the news update.
SNL, yeah.
Weekend update,
the specific weekend update. Sorry, wow. And I'm enjoying halfway through that. So.
Since Tina, the head writer of the show, has been the weekend update.
Yes.
Seat.
Yes, exactly. And he just getting off track here, but he's talking about how tough and how that didn't go well for quite a few years, and he was in fear of his job. Anyway, not about him. Yeah, tell us the process. How long were you there? How did that come about, and what was it like?
It's funny. It's not a ton of time, for the record. Like, I was there for a season. I was doing a one-man show in LA called Rosenfeld for Dictator. I had this weird feeling back in the late 90s that America was ripe for an autocracy. It was crazy.
Wow.
So this show was called Rosenfeld for Dictator. It was jokes about how Americans were too lazy for democracy, and we needed a benevolent dictator to just take over everybody. It was prescient. It was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I was doing the show. I had a friend who was on SNL, and she said, "Hey, they're doing a big flip at the update desk. You should definitely come out and do your show in New York." And I was like, "Okay, that's what I'll do." So I went and did my show in New York. And this is Rachel Dratch. I don't know if you remember her. She was like Debbie Downer on the show. Super cool person. I knew her from Chicago, and then we were friends in LA. And she was the person with whom I walked into a party once, and she said, "Oh, this is Pep Rosenfeld. He's a political comedian." And I was like, "Oh, I guess that's what I am." Well, man, okay. But so I went to New York. I did the show on, I guess it was Memorial Day weekend. If Memorial Day is the one that happens in like the end of the summer, I lose track of which one's Memorial Day and which one's Labor Day, and when I'm supposed to wear white. I don't know. But I did the show, and I launched it once. I organized a theater, and I got myself a Beamer, and I'm running around. It's a super overheated holiday weekend in New York, and I was like crashing on my buddy's couch in New York. It was classic, hey, let's put on a show, and I did the show. Nobody came. My buddy that I was crashing on his couch came. Rachel came, God bless her. My grandmother came, so I think that's the only time my grandmother ever saw me perform, which might be one of the best outcomes of that show. But nobody came to the show. But then, so I don't know if that's like, look, Mom, I failed because I mounted the show hoping that these people would come. They didn't come. But then I got a call from the producer of the update segment who was like, "Yeah, I heard you did this show, and I heard it went really well, and you want to come in and have a meeting." And I was like, "Oh, that's how it works." I didn't realize that. You don't have to actually have people see the show. You just have to have your friends say he did this show.
Yeah.
So I went in, and it was like so exciting. I'm walking into 30 Rock to have a meeting at Saturday Night Live. And yeah, the dude said, "Hey, look, write us some jokes and fax them in. and we'll see what happens. So I was like, great. So I went back to LA. I had already been writing jokes just like as a creative exercise, right? So I started every couple of days, I would send them in a bunch of jokes. And there was a Saturday night that I went out to a club, and I was out all night, but I'd set my VCR to record Saturday Night Live. And when I got home at like 4 a.m, I played Update. Tina Fey did 2 of my jokes, and I was like, "Ooh, that's got to be a good sign."
Wow.
And then 2 days later on Monday, the dude called me up and asked me to move out to New York. So super exciting, right? It was super exciting. And so I was writing for Update, right? That means a couple of things. One is, for me, it's a dream because all I'm doing is reading the newspaper, writing jokes, and it's fantastic. The 2 Update hosts then, one was Jimmy Fallon and one was Tina Fey. Tina, genius, brilliant comedy writer, so smart. Every joke you turned into her, if she used it, which was rare, it would get so much tighter and harder. I learned so much about joke writing from her. Jimmy was also there. And but so the mistake I made was Jimmy could really use people writing jokes for him in his voice, and I was like a little smart ass who just had started his comedy theater in Amsterdam, right? Because this is 5 years into Boom Chicago.
Right.
But I'd gone back to LA to sow some wild oats, which, by the way, they were sowing just great. Here I was in New York. But I was like, I don't have to write jokes for Jimmy. I'm going to write jokes for Tina because I'm fucking Pep Rosenfeld. It turns out that's not the most politically savvy way to hold yourself in this sort of a situation. And there's a lot of politics at SNL that I wasn't either aware of or didn't care about. So that's thing number one is when you're writing for Update, you're locked in the Update room and you don't sit with the other writers. You're not at the famous.
It's not the whole show.
No, and you're not at the famous table reads on Wednesday, and you don't have much time with Lorne either.
No.
Here's my one conversation with Lorne. I'm on the floor during the show, and I'm down there during Update, and I'm watching it, and there's a joke that I thought was funny. It wasn't even my joke. It's a funny joke, and I'm laughing, and Lorne puts his hand on my shoulder and says, "Be discreet." And that was my only conversation with Lorne Michaels.
Yeah.
Wow.
Will you be
so I was there for the season. And then, Jimmy needed writers. Tina didn't. So all of us Jimmy writers were purged. Non-Jimmy writers were purged. Yeah. But then we were nominated for the Emmy. And the thing you can always tell about a dude who's introduced by saying that he was nominated for an Emmy.
Didn't win the Emmy.
Yeah, correct. But it was an exciting experience and just a great time. I got to know some folks, and it was nice to sort of, because I was the first Boom Chicago person to work for SNL, right? But then after me came Seth, and we had writers like Joe Kelly, who went on to create Ted Lasso, and Heather Campbell, who now writes for Rick and Morty, and that's on the writer's side. And then we've got the other performers, Jason and folks like that.
Very cool.
Amazing.
Will you be watching The Lawn? I think there's a Lawn documentary that's just about to come out or just come out.
I will. By the way, I still watch the show. on YouTube.
There's a UK version now.
There sure is. Yeah. SNL London.
So, okay, I want to jump back to health. I'm going to go the other way. So sticking with you shortly, Pep. And, we can also cut this if you want. But bizarrely, when I was doing my research on you, it talked about you have twins.
I do.
And they were fairly premature.
Oh my God! Yeah.
You okay? Do you want to chat about how that was, how you dealt with that, or how to tell us?
100%. I actually talk about it these days in when I do keynotes. I talk about it because I think that I've always known that humor was a powerful tool, right? A lot of what I talk about is humor as a tool for not just communication, but getting through hard times, for lowering tension in rooms, getting people talking about what needs to be talked about. And so I always knew humor was awesome, right? And, it's better to laugh than not laugh. But it was when those boys were born. So December 2006, my wife is super pregnant, and we know it's twins. We're already freaked out enough about the twin factor. July 4th is when we discovered it was twins. So that was when it's become my lack of Independence Day.
Memorial Day. Oh, no. Shit.
Independence.
Nice. So it's December, and we sit down to have some tacos, and we're just getting ready to eat our tacos. And my wife experiences a physicality, which I won't go into, but which made her wonder, did my water just break? But we don't know. We've never had kids, and it's like a very trickle. It's not like the flood you see in movies. So we called the hospital, explained the situation. They're like, that's not water breaking. That's something else. Have your tacos and then call us back and we can talk more about it. So we had our tacos and it's still happening. So we called the hospital, more descriptions, and they were like, yeah, maybe you should come to the hospital like right now. So we went to the hospital, test. And they were like, ooh, why don't we put you in an ambulance and get you to a hospital that deals with premature kids? Because they're definitely about to be born. So that's what we did. We got in this ambulance, went to this other hospital. By the way, in the ambulance, they're taking us to the other hospital. And my wife, in pre-labor says to the drivers, hey, this hospital, it's still within the Amsterdam city limits, right? I want the kids' birth certificates to say Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
It is. So they were born in the 30th week. They were born halfway through the 30th week, which if you have kids, like that's crazy. And it was incubators. It was, stuff in with the nose. We could only touch them through with the gloves on, like they were radioactive at first. It was terrifying. And a lot of our friends kind of vanished a little bit. Not that they were bad people, but I think they were more freaked out than we were because we didn't know how scary it was, right? For us, it was just, this is how you have kids. But for a lot of our friends, they if they saw the kids or saw the pictures, they were like, you guys are screwed. And the doctors were very much like, hey, it's a roller coaster and we don't know what's going to happen. And, every day is a new challenge. And that does not sound optimistic. And there was even a rule at the premature ward, right? Because there's a special ward for the preemies. You're just not supposed to pay attention to the other parents with their kid because let them have their privacy and everybody's on their own journey. And we were like, that's super cool with us, but yeah. And some journeys ended worse than others. We got super lucky, right? Like our kids, when I give the talk, I put up a picture of the kid. Right away, I put up a picture of the kids at 19, which is what they are now, on a holiday, where one of them's holding a drink that the other one made for him. And I always say, look, one's an alcoholic, the other one's enabling him. They're doing great. They're doing great. But back then it was terrifying. And they're in the hospital. And then my wife, who gave birth with a C-section, which is not like a cute thing that good-looking rich women have, and it's home. It's a real operation, right? Yeah. So she's in the hospital too. I go home and I'm just talking to myself. No friends, no family. And I started writing these FAQs about the kids, but now nobody had any questions, right? I would just make up questions and then respond to them. And it became like a comedy routine, like an informative comedy routine that I would do with myself and then mail out to everybody. And I realized later, that was really a great coping mechanism for me, was using comedy to get through this time. So Jason, to respond to what you said earlier about with guys, it's always fight. I think there's other responses, right? And I think the deeper the wound, fight can be one of the ways out. But I think joking is a great way. Humor is a great one. Gallows humor. I mean, yeah, there's a reason why people would make jokes on the gallows, right?
I have a neuroscientist. She's amazing. She's ridiculously expensive, but she's worth every single penny. Dr. Rachel, huge shout out to you. She showed me a report that shows you can take more pain physically while laughing than you can if you're in a serious or angry mood, which is really interesting. So it fills completely with what you're saying. And that's both emotional and physical pain. They tested it with electrocution. And you could get up to almost a 9 or a 10 while laughing at a friend or watching your favorite comedy show versus just sitting there. The average person could get to a 3 or a 4. So that's a massive difference just through the chemicals that are released while we're in that space.
So I wrote a book about humor in the business place.
Hey, work-life balance, shameless.
Work-life balance.
Holding off on that, but we can get
well, it just came up naturally. No, because during the course of researching for the book, I found there was a case of a fellow who had an awful disease that just caused him constant pain. And this is, in the 1930s or 1940s. So they didn't have a ton of options for him. And what he started doing was watching films of old comedies. And he found that when he'd watch these old comedies, it was one of the few things that would actually reduce his pain and, like you say, increase his pain threshold. And by the way, this was old time comedy, so he wasn't even the good stuff.
Some might say the greatest. Charlie Chaplin, the Marx Brothers.
I had a friend watching a Charlie Chaplin movie once, and he went, "Okay, Charlie Chaplin, make me laugh because you never have before." That was the classics. but it works. So yeah, 100%, Jason.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like for me, that whole experience with the boys was a way of realizing that humor is a great way to deal with hard times and get through it in a productive way. Because I was A, dealing with it, but B, you know, informing friends and family about what was going on with the kids in this sort of fun, funny way.
Maybe that's why it's called laughing gas, to make you laugh. Anyway, that's my.
I think that's literally why it's called laughing gas.
Yeah.
I think the better question is, why is it called mustard gas? You wouldn't want to slather it on a hot dog.
True.
Well said.
Thank you for being, just for sharing that story. Yeah, Jason, same question for you. You've been shot. You've had, I can't remember the name of, and I don't want to say man boobs, but you've been through that. But you know, and you can talk to anything like that, or you know, like I mentioned the MS. How did that, you know, not come about, but finding out about that, living with that? I do recall when we first met, you did talk about that quite a lot in your posts. Less so now. Is it something that, you talk?
I didn't even notice that. It's interesting you say that. I used to say I suffer from multiple sclerosis. I now say I have multiple sclerosis. And I think the difference is MS is a strange disease. It's incurable, so you're stuck with it until you die. You don't know if it's going to kill you, or if it's going to blind you, or if it's going to take away your ability to speak, or if it's going to leave you crippled, which is the most common. So that's interesting. For me, it's been a blessing and a curse. My whole life's a blessing and a curse, depending on my POV at the time. But like, I'm fierce about my time, where I spend it, who I spend it with, what I spend it doing. And that's because I have MS, because I'm like, well, today's a good day. I've got a lot of energy. I'm running around. My body's working. I found out I had MS because I was in a supermarket with my dad and my brother, and all of a sudden, all the lights went off. And I grabbed them and I said, don't move. I'm sure it's fine. I've got you. And they were, what are you talking about? And I said, well, all the lights have gone out. I can't see a thing. And they went, that's just you. And we went back to the place, the home, and that was it for 3 days. I was blind for 3 solid days. We went to an optometrist. Optometrist says, your eyes are working. I don't understand why you're not seeing. It must be a brain thing. The brain is not connecting to the eyes. I had to book to go see a neurologist, which I was in South Africa at the time, visiting my dad and my brother, so it was very difficult to do. I ended up not being able to do it. Luckily, my sight came back. I flew back to London. I went to go see a specialist. I had a bunch of tests done and found a bunch of scars on my brain and my spine and my optic nerve. Got told by my neurologist at the time that it would shorten my life by 10 years. Given the fact that I've been shot, that's another 10 years. Given the fact that I grew up in a bad neighborhood, apparently that's another 10 years. So it's 30 years off my life. So let's say I live to 78, which is the average UK person. I was like, well, that gives me 58. I was turning 40 at the time, and I thought I've got 18 years, and I tried to speed through as much as possible in that short period of time. It was shocking because I gave up. I loved events. You know that. It's the community. The people are incredible. I was very good at it. I loved it, but I had to find something else. And that was a big, and at the time I was like, I'm going to do podcasting. People were like, you're mental. You've got 155,000 Twitter followers back when Twitter was a thing. You've got this huge audience because of events. And you're going to go try and, do something in tech where you've got zero experience. And I don't regret it. Like, I still think, and now I have a better neurologist who says, who knows what happens? You could have 30 years, you could have 50 years. Like, we don't know what the science is. I'm on a new testing drug, which so far so terrible, but hopefully it gets better. I don't know. Like, I think in some ways it's made me notice the important things. I was at a dinner with a bunch of ridiculously inverted commas successful. And I only say that now because I think I see success very differently. Before I saw it as money. And now I see people with lots of money who have terrible lives, who, terrible divorces and are not with their kids and are not doing something they love and are constantly stressed and are constantly worried about things. And I don't have that problem. Like, yesterday I booked a trip to Vietnam for a couple of weeks because I wanted to. And because I've now got 3 metrics of what I consider success, right? Did I live? Can I say I had a life, a proper life, a life that I think was worth living? Did I love? Did I love at least one person? And did one person at least love me back and witness my life? And did I matter to at least one person? Like, that's it. That's my metric. And if I can keep hitting that, I'm successful. And I don't look at anything else. And now when my friends are like, well, how's it going with the money? How's it going with business? Whatever. I'm like, no. How's your health? How's your relationships with your kids? How's your relationship with your partner? How things go? Like, I try and get a little bit deeper and get it. Because the same thing, you talked about your friends sort of disappearing when the kids got into trouble. When I went through my 3rd divorce, all the people that were at my wedding just weren't there to get me through the divorce. It seemed, I remember one friend particularly who said, it's a bit heavy, Jay. It's a bit heavy. I was like, I'm going through a divorce where I'm giving her everything because I think I can start again from scratch. I don't think she can. And he was just like, oh. And that was probably the last time I ever saw him. And I definitely can say about 80% of that wedding party is gone. It's like a very small group of people I now hang out with.
Yeah, wow. And
I've got a really good friend who's so into like when people are going through tough times to approach them about it, to talk about people who died, talk about divorce. It's
So important.
she so doesn't want to be the person that manages. I'm really trying to mirror that behavior. It's because it is
incredible. Yeah.
Right,
100%.
Sam.
No, it's yeah, it's all very beautiful. I guess I just wanted to quickly check. So with the MS, was it you giving up event? Is it because you need it's as little stress as possible, regular sleeping routine, or that because the industry definitely isn't built for that? Was that the main?
Yeah. I just couldn't do. I mean, I was working Monday to Sundays. I'd come to work at 10. Sometimes I finish at 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning. We close up, and then you know what it's like. You normally have 1 or 2 drinks because you want to come down with everyone. You want to ask them about their highs and their lows, their roses and their thorns. Then you're jumping in a train or you're jumping in a car. Then you're driving home. That's another hour. So you're getting home at about 6 or 7. You're sleeping for about 3 or 4 hours. You breakfast, you eat, you go. I mean, I've got a photograph. I was 144 kilograms, 38-inch waist. I had a scar. Well, it looked like a scar. It wasn't. It was bad skin. It looked like Gorbachev on my forehead. My hair was falling out. I was just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. My energy started dropping. I started speaking like I was slurring. People thought I was drinking at work. It was just the MS, how it affects my central nervous system. And yeah, I remember I was at a Cool Venue Awards and I'd just come off the stage presenting and someone was like, oh man, you've had a lot to drink. And I was like, what do you mean? And I didn't realize I was slurring the entire time. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is the final one. And that was actually the last time I hosted.
But Sam, like as someone who works at events and performs at events, I mean, like I always look at the event organizers and go, that is the job I never want. It's like when I was waiting tables, when I was younger and I would wait tables and see the restaurant manager and go, no, thank you. Like it's 2 jobs I do not want. So I super get that.
Yeah, it's awful.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I love being on stage. I don't mind the long hours, and we're very different. Obviously we're all different, but I definitely look at we come in and do a 2-hour to a half-day experience at a 5-day event for 1,000 people, and just organizing our little bit is enough for me. And then I see these things like, who's booking all those flights? Sorry, and what and like changes and where, it makes me want to be sick thinking about
accommodation, food. Experiences. And most people only remember 2 parts of an event, which is quite interesting. You remember your peak of emotional interest. So if you're an award show, whether you won or lost, you were nominated or picked up your award, and you remember the end. So whoever the genius was that came up with a goodie bag, that's brilliant because you'll remember getting that small gift as you leave.
Or hopefully you've worked with Song Division and in the end they've performed the song that we wrote throughout the 3 days, and that's the peak of the emotion and it's the end. Shameless plug. Let's talk about some more failure. Pep, any time in the last since you opened Boom Chicago or any other story where you've gone, don't want to do this anymore, can't do this anymore, things aren't looking good, give us some.
Well, I mean, like there are always business moments where, like, when the financial crisis happened, what do you know? Comedy shows for businesses are on the list of the chopping block. But I think, like for me, because I was thinking a little bit about what are some of the good "Look, Mom, I failed" moments. We did a show during the World Cup was it 2004, 2006? I guess it was 2006 was a World Cup year. Whichever year it was in Germany.
Yes.
It was 2006, and we did a show called Kick This, a comedy show about football, and it was me and Brendan Hunt, who's now Coach Beard on Ted Lasso.
Wow!
But we did this 2-person show, and it was about the World Cup. And the bit was he knows everything about football, as he has aptly demonstrated. I knew nothing about football, which was 100% true. I just couldn't. I didn't like sports at all. And we did the show, and the idea was we would do it sort of before matches or after matches, and it was a solid show. And the trouble is, it turns out that if you love football, you don't want to see a comedy show. And if you like comedy shows, you don't want to come see World Cup matches. And it was such a flop. It was such a failure. Its only success was that I am now interested in World Cup football, and that's it. But it was such like, and then as it was happening, we're like, oh, of course nobody likes this. Of course nobody's here. And then we did the same thing in 2011. We did a show called 9/11 Forever, and it was a comedy show about 9/11.
About that.
It was a great show also. And that was a well-received show, and like it was terrific. And it was me and 2 other folks. And, we talk about like, where were we when 9/11 happened, and sketches about security. And it was just about the effects of 9/11 on America and the world. So it was a terrific show. So that was a success part. But we decided that on 9/11 we would do a Sunday matinee, and it was like there was so much wrong with it. We don't do matinees. Nobody wanted to see Sunday. Nobody's coming like the 9/11 celebration. It was so dumb. And as I was going to the show where I knew there were like 8 people in the audience, I was just like, I don't know why we thought this was a good idea. And here I am going to suffer in the face of the audience. And
I'll tell you a little story. It'll take less than a minute. When I was in Thailand during 9/11, and I worked for the American School of Bangkok, I'd set up a swimming schools, like a bunch of swimming schools. And I was visiting the American School of Bangkok, just so happens. And the principal, Diane from Texas, was like, everyone's going home. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just going to check in on the swimming. And she was like, they've bombed America. And I was like, what? And people were running down the streets of Bangkok screaming, World War III. They've bombed America. They've bombed. The very next day, on one side of the street, they were saying, America will be back again, World War III. On the other side, they were saying, bomb America, long live every other country. And people were buying nonstop. That's how fast they were in reacting in a way of commerce to this catastrophe, this absolute crisis. But yeah, never forget. Exactly.
Crazy time, wasn't it? Jason, yeah, I mean, you tell, like I mentioned the business you started with your father, but it doesn't need to be that story. What resonates as far as just something maybe something you thought was just going to be absolutely the game changer that failed miserably, or you go.
Well, I think, Pep, right in the beginning, mentioned an act of bravery, one that I've never done, even though it blows people's minds to believe this. I've never started a business where everyone's told me not to do it. I've started businesses where everyone said, I don't get it. I don't get how you make money from a podcast. I don't get how you make money from events. I don't get how you make money from swimming school. I don't get how you do t-shirt print, like all these ideas that I've had, or AG1 for dogs, right? Paw Print Lab. Doesn't make sense. Like, how does it work? How do you test it? How do you know? What if a dog dies? Is that your fault? Blah, blah, blah. What if a kid dies in a swimming school? What if someone at events has a terrible experience, which happens all the time, especially the more you do and the more you do. What I've always done is pre-sold, right? I've gone out, spoken to people, tried to get them to pay, sort of the opposite of my generation, which I think is Pep's generation, which is if you build it, they will come, right? This idea of the field of dreams. And you did it. You went down, so you set up the thing, and people did come. You've proved the concept. I was so scared of doing that because I was just scared it wouldn't work. And already felt sort of ahead of the puck in the hopes that the puck would come to me. Hockey expression for those people that don't follow World Cup. But I did. When I left events, I started a tech company called Venue Me, which was Airbnb for event spaces where you could talk directly to the event managers. You could see the space. You could book it for the day or by the hour, which no one was doing at the time. And everyone said yes. And I flew around from Vegas to Amsterdam, to Barcelona for IBTM, to all the shows. I jumped on all the stages. I paid for other people to go out and do interviews and film them. And what would you do if you had this kind of tech? Because at the time, you would get all these proposals and you'd go through them one by one by one. So if you got through the third and someone was offering $6,000 for a Tuesday, you would sign it off, do the paperwork, and then get to the end of the pile and realize someone offered you $27,000 for the same Tuesday. And you couldn't go back and cancel now, and you just lost out. And, time is a perishable good. So now you've lost the space for a lot less amount of money, and you've still got to pay rent and pay fees and pay bills. So I came up with this idea. And what I learned was both English people and American people have this thing in common, which is if they like you, they'll say yes. But that doesn't mean they'll sign the check. So everyone said yes. We love the idea. We would love to invest in you. Of course we believe in it. Why wouldn't it work? Airbnb works, and it's a similar idea, and and it was it didn't work. Like I absolutely didn't work. And I was a CTO, chief technical officer. We were at this tech event, and a tech guy just said to him, what are you building? What code are you building it in? And he said English. And that was the sign. So this guy's more clueless than I am. He's saying English. He's learned all his stuff from the TV show Silicon Valley. So that was a terrible idea. That was a fiasco. And I had to close everything down. It was awful. It was absolute. And it's not even the worst one. But I call that the fiasco because I did believe if I just build it, everyone will get it. At some point, everyone will get it. and it'll work and it'll change the world. And interestingly enough, 5 years later, I did build it. I built Copus, a marketplace where you can book creative spaces by the hour, by the day, and workplaces. And it sold. It sold within a year, right?
Amazing.
But the timing was, I was too far ahead. People weren't even using Airbnb at the time. So that was a ridiculous idea that you were booking a space for an hour. Like, I'm in one right now of my own spaces. And, it's just, ours was a marketplace. It was exactly the same idea.
Yeah. And if it's any consolation, I know you did manage it with Copus, but and I don't want to go talk shop too much, but this is still an issue with one-click bookings, live venue bookings, live availability, because it means the hotels and venues need to keep it updated, which they don't do. So my wife Kitty, who's a venue sourcing specialist, they're still trying to do this. Cvent, all the big places, they still haven't figured out how to do it, and I don't think it'll ever happen because the venues and hotels aren't updating their live availability, and B, people do want a sense of hand-holding. Not to say what you created wasn't super successful, but I thought it was worth just touching.
You've got to remember, in our industry, and Kitty will tell you this, they still have the books.
Yeah.
They still have the physical books where they, highlight the date and pen in the people's address, and they don't go and check out the CRM system, and they're not going on their LinkedIn to talk about what spaces are like. It's so far back because it works. I learned something really interesting from an event planner I met in Monaco. I was doing this event, probably my biggest event ever. It was the American company Walgreens bought the British pharmaceutical company Boots.
Yes.
And the woman that owns it is actually Italian, Onella Barra. And I was talking to this woman, and she was doing everything. And she said, I had this idea for this thing called Venue Me, and it didn't work, and da-da-da. And she said, oh, it'll never work. And I said, what do you mean it'll never work? At some point it'll work. And she went, no, it'll never scale. And I was like, well, why not? And she went, in this industry, you're not trying to do your best. It looks like we are, but we're not. We're just trying not to get fired. So you don't want to take a chance too far out, because then you could get fired for getting it wrong. But if you just do what you've always done, you're probably going to get what you always got, which is you'll just get through it. And that's enough to keep you paid.
Yeah.
It's
Speaking of events, Pep, and we're going to have to wrap this up very shortly, so this could come into your shameless plug section. Talk about your work. You're a TED talker. You're an in-demand. What would you call yourself? Corporate keynote speaker, facilitator. Talk about your work in business.
Sure. And it's funny because I just saw that post on LinkedIn about my TED talk, but I don't know what he's talking about. like I got to talk to those guys, because it's not like I do a bunch of TED talk. I do a lot of talking in business. I've done one. It was years ago.
Yeah. 2012 maybe.
Yeah, it was a while. I think you know better than I do, because you just did the research. Yeah. Well, what I'm doing a lot now is I've taken a lot of the work of the book of work-life balance, and I've sort of that was really about why and how humor is so powerful in business, and how people can actually become funnier. And the talks I do for companies they're talks about how you can use humor to get past that moment. That moment in a conversation where like you're like, ooh, should I say this, or will it get too weird? Right? I think it's that same instinct that had people steer clear of Jason during his divorce, or me when the kids were born. And it's something I call social friction, right? And I think humor is a great tool to get rid of that social friction and help you strengthen your culture and build resilience, get through change, or just collaborate better as a team. And so what I do is I work with a lot of companies on that concept. And, the tools I use can help people get funnier, but they also help them communicate better, help them collaborate better, help them tell stories better and more inspiring way. And that's what I do a lot of in these talks. And the talks are always interactive. It's not just me talking, but it's me having folks do stuff so that they're not just listening, but also really doing and learning. And it's like a song division performance, right? Like if people did nothing, if you just told them about it, it wouldn't be nearly as fun or B successful.
Yeah, or if we wrote the song for them at the end, it's like, no, that's not how it works. You've got to do it.
No, you've got to sort of do it, and then we'll really make it good.
And we'll bring it to life, exactly.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing a lot now, and I quite like it, and it's one of those things where I honestly feel like A, I enjoy it, but B, I think I walk out of there and a business is like slightly more positive than it was before I got there, and that's a good feeling. That ticks one of Jason's boxes.
Yeah, and you are incredible at it. I'm going to give you a shameless plug. You've been emceeing the Nordic Business Forum. For the Nordic Business Forum, how many years now?
I think this will be the 7th year I've hosted the Nordic Business Forum. Yeah, I do a lot of event hosting too. I mean, my real focus these days is the speaking, is the being introduced as opposed to introducing other folks. But I'm pretty good at the introducing too. And the Nordic Business Forum is a great. If I can give a shameless plug for them, they run a terrific event, and it's a real pleasure to be there and to help folks and meet folks and be inspired by those speakers.
Well, and talking about setbacks and rejection, you introduced me to them, and after about one email, they just said, "Not interested, sorry."
I really thought you'd be a good fit too. I really thought you'd be a good fit.
I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get him. Shout out!
I think what they are is they're worried about having their people have to do stuff. I think they ironically like it when their folks just listen. And I think they're incorrect. I think their folks are happier when they do things. But
there's a balance there. I mean, when Schwarzenegger and people like that are keynoting, I get that, but there's a balance there. Jason, you could probably speak to what do you think the model sits these days at events where being spoken at, two-way street interaction is it? What do you?
It depends on the audience. By the way, the book is 1983 on Amazon. I ordered one, so very excited, Pep, to read your book.
I'm tickled. I was just thinking the same thing about listening to your podcast. I was
thank you.
I feel like everything he's talking about is stuff I want to learn.
And he's got books as well. Jason can.
Thank you. I think it depends on the audience. Like the American audience, you can play with. You can move them. You can get them stand up. You can get them to interact. You can get them. I remember I did this thing at the MGM in Vegas where I said, "Could someone come to the stage?" And a bunch of people rushed to the stage. And I said, the back, people in the back of the room, could you please come to the front of the room? Just jump on stage. First person to jump on stage. And it was like a rush from the back line to the front line. And the person got up and I gave them $100. And everyone was like, wow, $100. And they sort of sat down. And I said, that's entrepreneurship. It's the ability to stand up when everyone else isn't and rush your way through. And there's obstacles and other people that you're fighting against. And there's timing. And that kind of explained the whole show. Did the same thing in London at Confex, and no one got up. No one moved. I was just like,
I think I was at the MGM. Was that IMAX?
Yeah, it was IMAX.
Yeah, I was at that. Yeah.
And I was just like, what a different audience. What an app. And I did a talk on resilience in Turkey, and same thing. Just they wanted something that hit the markers, that gave them something to speak about when they left, that was easily rememberable. And I think that's also a big thing, right? In speaking, and I'm sure people can talk this much more than I can, but like, I always start at the end because that's probably what they're going to remember the most. So like, what's my ending? How powerful is my ending? Can my start be something that immediately breaks them out of frame or takes them off scrolling or gets them to pay attention? And then I try and think of at least 3 things, just 3, that they will remember. And that by remembering it and telling someone, they will look smarter for it. That's it. So whether it's like, I did a talk at the Shard recently, and I said, what is the fear of heights? And everyone screams, vertigo, vertigo, vertigo. And I'm like, actually, it's not. It's, acrophobia, because of acrobatics, going up in the air and coming down. Vertigo is actually the fear of looking up. And it's because of the movie Vertigo, much like Alanis Morissette's Irony. Isn't it ironic? We all think that's irony when that's paradoxical. And then everyone remembers that one thing. And then later when they meet me, they're like, oh, by the way, I told a friend that's not vertigo. And I look so smart. And I'm like, that's it. Like, that's my first piece. One thing that you remember, nothing else. You remember this. And I try and do one thing per talk. And I also never do the same talk twice because I don't want to get bored. I have learned recently from a great comedian that's the worst thing you can do because your act doesn't get better and better. So you can learn which hits and which doesn't, and what's going to get the audience. So I will do that next time. Yeah. I think you've got to look at your audience, but also you need to make it easy for them to say yes. And I think sometimes as entertainers, we struggle on the business side or creatives or whatever. Like, do you make it really simple to say yes? Is it absolutely a no-brainer? You're sort of saying, I'm going to come in, here's all the results, here's all the case studies. My podcast company, which I sold 2 years ago, we didn't even have a website. And people are like, how the hell were you doing so well? As a foster sale ever on acquired.com. And I said, because all I did was go, Alamari used it, Louisa used it, Caleb used it, John used it, Alex used it, Jason used it, Paul used it, Thomas used it. And you can call every single one of them and ask them how much money they made through me just consulting with them, right? And I remember I did a talk with Lance Armstrong about his podcast, and that's all. And he was like, "We don't even have a website." And I was like, "Don't need a website. I've never advertised. I've never marketed. Just try and make it as simple as humanly possible for them to say yes. Do you have a show reel? Do you have lots of testimonials? Is the price something they can pay before and after? Can you do some sort of guarantee? Like, listen, if no one laughs, if one person complains, I'll give you your entire check back. You'll never have to pay me for the event that I come in and do the event at. I guarantee you. And also, if you know the audience, like English audience, they don't complain. They complain when they get home over a cup of tea. They're not going to do it to the conference event organizer. Yeah. The Americans will. Be a little bit careful.
Yeah, so right, that cultural piece that, anyone can be moved. That I've done events in Australia, around the world, Australia, Asia, America, UK, very different audiences. And to your
Very
point,
different.
yeah, at the start, hey, in the US, hey, we're going to write a song. Crowd goes mental, or crowd goes wild. I'm like, oh, this is fun. UK, deathly silence. This is my worst nightmare. Get me out of the room. We get them there through the process, and it's like you said, getting them to say yes early. Our thing is getting them to turn to the person next to them and share their first ever concert experience. So no speaking on a mic, just a very quick story. Everyone can answer that question almost. So we ease them in. And also I've learned self-deprecation helps big time in the UK. Just
Amen.
Giving
Hell
myself
yeah.
shit. These final
But
words,
I would
guys,
say,
Pep.
because I do a lot of stuff, a lot of different countries, and I find that folks are always willing to play ball, right? Like maybe they're slow to do it, maybe they're fast to do it.
Yes.
And I think what you said about giving them easy challenges, right? Like nobody gets up and makes a fool of themselves. They do stuff in like little groups of 2 or 3. Everybody does stuff in groups of 2 or 3. Who'd say no to that?
Yep.
I think folks are more game than we give them credit for, no matter where they are.
100%.
I completely agree with you, and announcing the elephant in the room as well is what I now.
Yeah.
Who thinks this is going to be fun? 20%. Who thinks this is their worst nightmare? 80%. And then I self-deprecate now and say, who's wondering how I support my own body weight with these legs? And then that kind of gets them in, and then we do that exercise. So it's this thing, but end result. Identical, US and England. Like, we're ready. We've built the trust. We're going to perform the song. Everyone's up and in. It's. That's why I enjoy the UK probably the most, because I know it's how tough it is and where we get that hero's journey. Anyone have any more shameless plugs? Because we're going to wrap this bad boy. Books, how to contact you if they want to work with you or learn more about your businesses.
Pep, do you want to go first? Respect to the
I
respect.
think I'm easy to find. I'm Pep Rosenfeld on LinkedIn, PepRosenfeld.com on the internet, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only Pep Rosenfeld.
Yeah,
You are. I Googled
balance.
you.
Yeah, work-life balance, amazing book.
Jason Allan Scott, only one on the internet, only one on LinkedIn. I'm Jason Allan Scott and absolutely everything. It's ALLAN, which is probably the only mistake anyone ever makes, is they somehow spell it with an E. Currently doing consulting for businesses, unconventional builders, just helping them with where's the bottleneck? How can I fix it as fast as humanly possible? How do I give you a guarantee that if it doesn't, I'll pay you 10,000 out of my own bank account, because I've so far had a 100 out of 100 score. That's not on starting businesses. That's on helping businesses. I've definitely not done as well on my own businesses. I get in my own way like almost every founder does. I think they call it the King Solomon paradox. He was this fantastic king in the Bible, but if you actually do the historical work, he was one of the worst people at home. He had debt. He had wives that hated him. People were trying to kill him all the time. He was a terrible friend. But, he was really good at separating babies from their mothers and putting them back together again. So easy to find. I'm hoping I can help more people while I can for as
Wait,
often.
is that how the Bible story ends? He cuts it in half?
No, he doesn't. He does. No babies are harmed in the making of that story.
I thought this was going to be another Walt Disney story.
Oh God!
Actually, I haven't done anything on the Bible yet. I'll put that on my playlist.
You should. I've got a book to send you, Jason, which is I don't have it on me, but it's 50 stories on failure throughout history, and there's some.
I'd love that.
You might have read it. But
I haven't read it.
To say it one more time, your podcast, the Jason Allan Scott Show, is one of my favorites. I'm about 7 episodes in. I think the last one's from March, though. Is it done, or are you on a break?
No. So I just read over the bank holiday. I read 3 books, so I'm putting that into summer. Right. It just takes a lot of work for me to go through the whole book, then do the red string theory, then do the what do you get from this? Like what can you use after finding out that Howard Hughes' dad got lucky with a thing that broke through granite that allowed his company to make $500 million a year, whether Howard Hughes did a single thing or invented the greatest, longest, tallest, heaviest plane in human history.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Pep as well. If you're ever in Amsterdam, please get yourself to Boom Chicago. One of my most fun nights in Amsterdam, and I've had many fun nights. My stag do was in Amsterdam, so to say that means it must have been a fun night.
That does make it work. Makes the plug much more powerful.
So true.
You're both just legends and lovely humans, and you've been really generous with your time. I can't thank you enough. See you next time, everyone.
So Abona.
See y'all.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You piece of shit.
Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Hurry up and watch me fall.